And I was like, yeah, that went well, I think. So it was like, now I'm like, okay, if you can do that, like that's just solo. Well, when you got a band to rely on there to play with, it's much easier than going out and, trying to nail a classic solo guitar piece like Eruption, which is just, So, but you know what the main thing is, guys? It's like you got to practice it as, this is a little tip for guitar players out there, if anybody's out there plays. You practice it standing up as though you were performing it. So you got to do it with the spirit and the intensity, even when you're alone, like in your room practicing, that it would require to do it live. And that's how you do it. And if you just do that and do it over and over and over again, then when you get in with a real drummer and bass player, it's like, well, now it's just cake because I've got drums and bass. It is, as soon as the drummer lays into the crash ride cymbal, and the bass player's cranking and stuff, it's like, if you've worked on it like that, you're your own worst critic. You kind of get there, and then you just go do it, You go for it.
And it helps to be Pete Thorn. Pete Thorn, musical savant. Come on. If you guys heard him play, it's
he's an unbelievable player.
Right. Well, yeah. And Pete, I was going to ask you, who hadn't you played with? Right. And I mean, you're like one of the kings of YouTube. You've got quite the following.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
Oh, thank you, man.
So, you don't have to be a household name, but you're obviously not a slouch and, well known in the industry. So
absolutely.
I'll tell you, when Mitch first announced this, I belong to a Van Halen board, and they're like, people like, oh, Mitch is doing a Van Halen tribute. Oh, okay, that's cool. Oh, Pete Thorn is playing? Really?
That's what I said.
I mean, no joke, Pete. People's eyebrows went up, and they were like, "Really?"
That's nice to hear.
I'm not like kissing your ass for the podcast, but your name carries some weight among people. So.
That's great. Let me ask you: are you guys considering touring this, or is this just a one-time gig?
It's a one-time gig. We're kind of trying it on. See how it fits. And the rest of the band is absolutely phenomenal as well. Pete was my first call.
Okay.
The other two guys were also my first call. So in my producer head, I'm thinking, who's my ultimate Van Halen band? And it's these three guys.
Who are the other two?
The drummer is Wayne Killius. He's a session drummer from Nashville who I've known as soon as almost the first day I moved to Nashville. I hired him for a session, and I was blown away. And I was like, God, will you be in my band? And he's like, no. No, I won't. I play sessions for a living all day long, every day.
Right.
So he's a rocker who moved to Nashville, and, he's been on Big and Rich and Keith Urban and Luke Bryan and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He's just playing sessions all day, every day. He is so excited about this. I mean, he just jumped through the phone when I called him. I couldn't believe it. And on bassist and vocals is Dan Spreewald, who is the bass player and background singer with Phil X, who's in Bon Jovi.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, he's in Phil's band, and I've been following him for years, thinking, God, if I ever do something, I want that guy.
That's incredible.
He's just one of my favorite bass players. He's got a great voice. He's got a great vibe. Yeah, he's actually also Canadian, which Pete is Canadian. I love Canadians.
Nice.
And I just get along with Canadians. I don't know. I'm from North Dakota.
Well, they're nice people. Canadians, I don't know. They're collectively nice. It's amazing.
They really are.
That's really cool. And Pete, listen, if you also have another career, I don't think you've explored, my friend, but you have an incredible radio voice. I don't know if you're aware of this.
Yeah.
You could do some voiceover work or radio work. You definitely have some talent in that department as well.
Wow, thank you. Well, sometimes I think I'm in the wrong business, and it's like, when the guys come on in the movie trailers and they're like, in a land before time.
You could do that.
Yeah, you definitely have that voice.
You could do
world,
that.
Right? I mean, you have that. Or, something like, it's late at night, and you're listening to the mellifluous sounds of Pete Thorn. I mean, yeah. If the guitar thing doesn't work out for you, I think you got to back up.
Oh, man.
He's also going to be singing Ed's parts.
I'm almost more scared about that, Mitch, than I am the guitar. They're asking, because that is like, you know what? Everybody always talks about Mike, and Mike's a great singer, a big part of the sound.
Yep.
But they don't give Ed the credit. Ed was the rock in the middle.
Yep.
Yeah, totally.
He was super in tune.
Yep.
Always sang. You never hear him on live recordings singing poorly or not. That he just sounded solid all the time, just great. So he was such a big part of the sound.
That's the truth. That's the truth. Are you guys going to consider recording this?
Yeah, actually. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll be videotaping and recording it as well. Yeah.
Okay, for release or just for yourselves?
Just for ourselves.
Okay.
Because now with the technology, see, we're going to have a video wall, right?
Okay.
So with the video wall, you have to have cameras as well, so we can be up on the video wall during the show.
Okay.
You know?
Yep.
It's going to be a big pro production show.
That's great.
And so along with that, so now the technology, it's because it's digital, it's so easy to capture everything. So it's easy to capture the audio multi-track. It's easy to capture the video digitally. And so we'll just have it. And so, you know, if anything, we decide to do something with it, then we will, you know. I mean, it's just good to have. It's good to have a record of it.
Sure.
You know?
Sure. And are you a pipe in keyboards or use a keyboardist?
I think we're only going to have keyboards on one song, which is Jump.
Oh, okay.
So I think we're just going to pipe them in, for that.
Excellent. And in terms of singing these songs, now that, you know, Ed's passed, was it emotional at all for you, Mitch, at any point, or?
Oh my God, it's emotional all the time. I mean, when Pete and I first connected, we talked for the first time. We talked for, I think, 2 hours.
Yeah.
It was a cathartic conversation of two people who were actually strangers, you know, who had this connection named Eddie Van Halen, and it's just amazing. And it was very emotional, and I had goosebumps during most of the conversation. Yeah, for me, it's all very emotional, and I actually wondered about that. Like, how am I going to be on stage? Like, am I going to start crying during, you know, like a song? Like, you know, because I did songs with Van Halen, so do those songs, and I've never done those songs otherwise, right?
Right.
So when I do them with this band, is that going to be emotional? And, you know, there's all that stuff going on.
Yeah.
You know,
and it's going to be a year right to around the time of the concert that Ed has passed. It's within that week.
Yeah. Well, that's just a coincidence. Or maybe
of course it is. I understand that, but I'm just saying it's just hard to believe that a year has passed over that time. Now, will you do It's the Right Time?
We had not planned on that because people don't know it, and so I don't like to challenge people live. You know?
Okay.
We'll talk about it maybe a little bit, but I'm not sure. It doesn't feel like that's something that needs to happen to me.
What about on stage? Will you talk about your experience?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
I think Pete and I might banter a little bit back and forth as well.
Okay.
About Ed, because we have similar experiences. And when, you know, I just let him do his thing and talk, but I could have interjected into his story like 10 times.
Right.
And just said, oh, what about this? Or what about that? And da-da-da. You know, like when you walk into 5150, it smells like the 70s.
Oh, really?
It smells like Tolex on the amps, and it smells like cigarette smoke, and it smells like tubes burning.
Yeah.
tubes.
Right. Yeah.
And there's only one thing that smells like that. You have to have those three things in the same room to get that smell.
Right. Absolutely.
Man, I mean, that's great.
Right?
Mitch.
Right, Pete? I mean, isn't that right?
Yeah, dude. I mean, being up there is just such, you got to spend quite a bit more time, I would bet, there than I did. But going in there, like, I don't know about you, but around every nook and cranny in that place is a guitar neck hanging or a body or a guitar, and you're like, oh my God, there's that one from that.
Yeah.
You know? Or actually, like when I went up there and he pulled out he showed me the guitar that he played on I was mentioning the tapping part on this track we were working on. It was the Ripley guitar.
Oh,
he pulled it out and he goes, yeah, I used it, which was, you know, he played on Top Jimmy on 1984. And I knew what it looked like. I'd seen it, but he's like, yeah, I use this. See, it's got like, and I'm just going, oh my God, yes, I know exactly what that is. It's a freaking Ripley guitar.
Wow.
That, you know, and it's just like these little pieces of history up there. So it's a magic place.
Well, it seems from the pictures and the video that I've seen, it almost looks like a lab more than like a professional studio. It's like the inside of Ed's head, I guess. You know, it's like a million little pieces of, you know, like, it's wild.
There's a terrific article I found a little while ago. Somebody sent it to me, I think, but it's a reprint and it's online. I wish I could find it and get it. You guys might have seen it already, but when the studio was built, there was this great article that detailed the build and all that, you know, talking to, I think, Don Lander was part of the article and stuff, was talking to about, you know, how I think it was like, you know, originally a converted racquetball court or something.
Yeah. That was because of zoning. It was like it was a tricky situation because they were almost like hiding the fact that they had a studio there because I think you weren't really allowed. You have to realize, like, you know, there's zoning and all kinds of ordinances, and I think they had to almost have the racquetball court. It almost was like half of the building, and then somehow I think they overtook it and made more room for the drums. Right, Dave? Wasn't it something like that? It was...
it was something like originally, you know, they're like, we got a lot of cement here for a racquetball court, you know? Like, Yeah, we do. Yeah. And then, they built the studio, and they had to have it in the footprint of the racquetball court. And then, you couldn't cram Alex's drum set into a racquetball court effectively. So, yeah, I think a few years later they built it out.
Yeah.
It's just amazing that Ed was like, I'm building a studio in my backyard. And he did. And he recorded albums with it. It wasn't like a home studio where you're like, I'll F around. And then, we'll go to Sunset and we'll record.
That was a little bit of a rub. If you read the Ted Templeman book, Ted was under the impression that Ed was doing it like a place for him to record ideas and demos. He'd never thought that he was going to plan on making all of Van Halen's albums from there. And when he did find that out, he was pretty ticked because Don Landy built that place. He's the one who, basically scotch taped that whole thing together. And back in the day, it was really raw. From what you saw when you came into the picture in 2009, it was way more advanced. But back in 84, or 83, I guess you could say, the place was like duct taped together. I mean, it was really makeshift,
And you got to give a lot of credit. I remember seeing a quote about Don recently where somebody said, Don's the guy that could build a 747 out of parts and then fly it.
Yeah.
I love that quote. It's like, he was such a big partner in the Van Halen sound. Because let's face it, like 1984, I don't know about you fellas, but like to me, I can't imagine that record sounding any different. To me, it's perfect.
It really is. It's a beautiful piece. It's just so wild how different. 1984 and 5150, both genius records, but my God, are they different. I mean, they really are so different. What's also amazing, in addition to switching the singers, which is already a monstrous ordeal, right? To go from that album to the other album, I mean, it's literally a totally different band. I mean, it's like even Ed's guitar sound is different. But it's interesting. On our last podcast, we had the gentleman from Guitar World who wrote the book, this new book coming out called Eruption. They spent years at 5150 for Guitar World and all these different eras and stuff like that. And they really said something that really blew my mind. They said it's not so much that Dave quit or this, that. They felt like Ed was done with Dave by 85, like he needed to move on and move in a completely different direction. And when he broke with Sam, he was done with Sam, almost like musically, and had to move on in a different direction. Because if you look at the difference between 1984 and 5150, it's stark. If you look at the difference between Balance and Van Halen 3, it's stark. I mean, it's totally different records, and the bands are totally different. So it's just wild that Ed really had so many different areas that he wanted to explore, but then I think he did feel a little confined with the Van Halen tag. You know how it is in the rock world, like people, for example, Mitch is in Great White, right? Like I grew up with Great White. I listened to Great White. I've seen Great White in concert. I already have a preconceived, established vibe and feel of what a Great White album and concert is like. So it's like that happens with AC/DC, that happens with Motley Crue, that happens with Def Leppard, and everybody has these built-in feelings and sounds and understandings of what that band is like. And then when that clashes, it's tough. But Ed got away with it with Sam, and they actually took it in another direction and still had success, which is why I thought he was confident that that would happen with Gary, but that didn't work out for obviously many reasons. But I wanted to ask you, Pete, while you were up at 5150, did Ed play you any of what he was working on or stuff that he just wanted to show you? Because he loves to show people stuff. Like, he's always wanting to, hey, what do you think of this? Hey, what do you think of that? Like, he's like a kid that gets very excited about his new stuff. So did he, share stuff with you, or was everything just about the Chris Cornell track?
No, actually, we did. There was one. So this, my whole story starting with him was in the summertime, and I can remember then that December going up just to see him,
Yep.
and I got him something for Christmas.
Oh,
And so
really?
I wanted to bring it to him. It was like a custom phaser that's made by a small boutique company. So I had it engraved on the back. Really cool. It was a nice fellow from Retrosonic up in Canada. He makes great pedals. And so he made this really nice, kind of like very similar to the Phase 90. What do you get the guy that's got everything? But I thought that's something a little different than maybe what he's got. It's a boutique one. So I brought it up to him. Okay, first of all, he's so sweet, that guy. When, if he was in a good spirits and a good mood and stuff, like a lot of us, he was just so, I don't know, he seemed like choked up because I gave him this gift, I'll never forget. He went in the other room and he goes like, oh,